Chapter 9. Beneath the Surface. The setting sun bled across the horizon, painting the Crestwood neighborhood in hues of amber and rose. It was the kind of idyllic scene usually reserved for postcards, the kind that promised safety and tranquility. But tonight, that promise was a lie. A poison was seeping into Crestwood, a fear more primal than any its residents had ever known. Sheriff Oliver, the male Krylls sheriff of Crestwood, paced the makeshift command center in the Crestwood Elementary Gymnasium, his face etched with grim lines. The stories, once dismissed as drunken ramblings or teenage pranks, had become too frequent, too consistent, too bloody. Neighbors whispered of a monstrous creature lurking in the woods, a nightmarish predator unlike anything they'd ever seen. They called it a dinosaur, a devil, a curse. Oliver, a man of logic and reason, preferred to call it Specimen A. "We need to get these people out of here," Oliver barked, his voice echoing across the empty basketball court. "I want a full evacuation of the neighborhood, sector by sector. Make sure everyone understands, this is not a drill." The other officers bustled around, relaying orders into crackling radios. The air thrummed with a nervous energy, a frantic race against an unseen threat. Along with the evacuation, Oliver ordered a complete blackout. No lights, no noise. We need to starve this thing of sensory input, force it to move on. But Vargoth wasn't driven by simple hunger. He was drawn to Crestwood, to the vibrant pulse of life that throbbed within its streets. He relished the terror, the chaos, the exquisite symphony of screams that followed his arrival. The blackout was a challenge, not a deterrent. Darkness was his ally, his cloak, his weapon. His sleek, dark blue form, almost impossibly graceful for its size, melted from shadow to shadow. Pale blue eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the landscape. There was a thrill in the hunt, a satisfaction in the kill that no other sensation could match. He was a predator honed to perfection, a masterpiece of malevolent design. The first sign of his presence was a choked yell, quickly silenced. 3 officers, patrolling the perimeter, were ambushed. Their screams were swallowed by the night, their radios falling silent. Then came the unimaginable. A woman's shriek, followed by the sickening crunch of bone. A horrifying confirmation of the town's worst nightmare. A baby torn from its crib, and a dog impaled high on a tree, a gruesome testament to the creature's unbridled savagery. Further out, screams erupted from a nearby house, where a teenage couple was slaughtered. From above, panic gripped Crestwood. The evacuation, already chaotic, descended into a desperate scramble. People abandoned their belongings, fleeing in their nightclothes, fueled by primal terror. Oliver, his face streaked with sweat and grime, fought to maintain order, his voice hoarse. He knew they were losing, that Vargoth was too fast, too strong, too intelligent. A team of seasoned hunters arrived, armed to the teeth, their faces grim. They were professionals, confident in their ability to track and eliminate any threat. But they were no match for Vargoth. The creature was too fast to keep up with, and proved too powerful for the guns of the hunters. Their mangled remains were found later, scattered and broken, a grotesque warning to anyone who dared to hunt him. That night, at a secluded laboratory, the monster slaughtered an entire SWAT team, painting the sterile white walls with crimson. He moved with impossible speed, his razor-sharp claws tearing through flesh and bone with terrifying ease. Then the creature sought rest. He discovered a small boy's birthday party, the air thick with laughter and the smell of cake. He watched from the shadows, his pale blue eyes burning with a cold, unholy light. The boy, celebrating his special day with friends in the pool, became the final, horrifying act of the night. A single, frantic scream cut through the festive air, followed by a chilling silence. The water, moments before filled with joyous splashing, turned a disturbing red. The following day was no better. An elderly driver found himself stranded deep within the woods, his truck disabled. He wrestled with the back door, hoping to find tools to repair the vehicle. But before he could react, Vargoth descended from above, a blur of blue and silver, and the driver knew his time was up. Even terrorists and trained soldiers proved no match for the beast, all cut down mercilessly by his claws and teeth. On a night out, the monster slaughtered a teenage Kryll man with his 2 human girlfriends in an abandoned military compound after their skinny dip. 2 human men who were camping in the woods met a similar fate, one torn apart while tending the campfire, the other dragged screaming from the lake, his pleas for help swallowed by the darkness. The bodies were piling up, the fear was paralyzing, and Oliver knew with a chilling certainty that Crestwood was losing its soul. Vargoth wasn't just hunting them, he was dismantling them, piece by piece, until nothing was left but echoes of shadows, and the chilling promise of more darkness to come. Desperation clawed at Oliver. The National Guard was on its way, but he knew they'd be too late to save what was left of Crestwood. The creature was too cunning, too elusive. Oliver said to himself, "It's not stopping." He needed to change tactics, to take the fight to the monster. The old Blackwood Caverns, a network of treacherous unexplored tunnels carved deep beneath the rugged hills north of Crestwood, seemed like the only option. Local legends whispered of bottomless pits, of labyrinthine passages that swallowed explorers whole. It was a gamble, a damn fool's errand, but Oliver was out of options. He gathered a small team of volunteers, hardened men and women, some humans and Krylls, their faces grim with resolve, their eyes burning with a mixture of fear and righteous anger. They were hunters, miners, veterans, people who knew how to handle themselves in tight spots. He didn't tell them the full extent of the danger, just that they were going after something nasty. He didn't want to scare them off completely. "The National Guard is coming, but they won't be here for at least 24 hours. We can't wait." Oliver addressed them, his voice strained but firm. Martha, a 60-year-old human shopkeeper, her face etched with fear, spoke. "Wait? People are dying, Oliver, being torn to shreds." Daniel, a 30-year-old human miner, his jaw set with resolute determination, asked, "What do you propose, Sheriff?" Oliver took a deep breath. Blackwood Caverns. It's wild and rugged, with passages and caverns that could be a lair for the monster. A murmur of apprehension rippled through the group. Kaylee, a 20-year-old Kryll veterinarian, her brow furrowed with skepticism, voiced the general consensus. "Those caves? They're death traps. Nobody goes in there." Oliver met her gaze, his eyes reflecting the grim reality. "I know the risks, but it's the only chance we have. We take the fight to it." "I'm in," Daniel said, the word echoing in the tense silence. A few others nod, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. They geared up with heavy-duty flashlights, rifles loaded with silver-tipped bullets, a long shot, but worth a try, and enough rope to rappel down a cliff face. Oliver led the way, his face a mask of grim determination. Oliver drives a pickup truck filled with the volunteers. Rain streaks across the windshield. Their faces are grim, illuminated by the passing headlights. The entrance to Blackwood Caverns was a gaping maw in the earth, a dark and ominous symbol of the horrors that lay within. The air grew colder as they descended, a damp, musty chill that seeped into their bones. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the darkness became. The only sound, the drip, drip, drip of water, echoing through the vast, empty chambers. "Stay close, watch your step, and keep your eyes peeled," Oliver said to the group. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a large cavern, its ceiling lost in the shadows above. Oliver set up a makeshift base camp, spreading out maps and assigning patrol routes. "All right, here's the plan. We split into teams of 2, Oliver said. "Search the surrounding tunnels. If you find anything, report back immediately." The plan was simple. Search for the creature, corner him, and kill him. Easier said than done. Kaylee and Daniel walked down a narrow tunnel, their flashlights illuminating the damp walls. "I don't like this, Daniel," she said. "This place gives me the creeps." "Just focus on the job, Kaylee. We need to find this thing," Daniel gravely said. Hours passed, filled with tense silence and the nervous rustling of equipment. Then the scream started, distant at first, then growing louder, closer. Another scream, closer this time. Kaylee and Daniel exchanged terrified looks. "What was that?" Kaylee shouted. Daniel raised his assault minigun and instructed, "Stay behind me." Panic erupted. Men shouted. Flashlights danced wildly across the cavern walls. "Hold your ground. Everyone back to the base camp," Oliver roared, trying to maintain control, but it was no use. The creature was upon them. From the shadows, he pounced. It was a slaughter. The creature moved with impossible speed, his claws tearing through flesh, his jaws snapping bone. Silver bullets seemed to bounce harmlessly off his thick, scaled hide. One by one, the volunteers fell, their screams echoing through the darkness until they were abruptly silenced. Finally, only two remained, Oliver and a burly Krill miner named Hank. They stood back to back, their rifles raised, their faces drenched in sweat and fear. Hank's eyes were wide with terror, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "This was a damn foolish idea, Oliver," he screamed, his voice cracking. "We're all gonna die down here because of you." Oliver said, "Just focus on staying alive, Hank." He knew Hank was right. He had led them all to their deaths, but he couldn't afford to dwell on it now. He had to focus on survival. Suddenly the creature lunged, knocking Hank off his feet. Oliver fired, emptying his rifle into the creature's chest, but he barely flinched. Hank screamed, his body disappearing from view as the creature dragged him away. Oliver was alone. He stood there for a moment, paralyzed by fear and despair. He had failed. He had led these men to their deaths for nothing. Then a flicker of anger ignited within him. He wouldn't give up. He would fight. He would kill this monster, even if it was the last thing he did. "I won't give up," he said to himself. With trembling hands, he reloaded his rifle and proceeded further into the caverns, resolute in his intention to confront the creature. Meanwhile, Hank, his nerve shattered and his spirit broken, stumbled blindly through the darkness, desperate to escape. "I gotta get out of here," Hank panted. He didn't care about Oliver, or the town, or anything but getting out of this hellhole alive. He finally reached a narrow passage, the only way out. "The exit," Hank whisperingly gasped. But as he hurried along, his flashlight caught on something glistening in the darkness. He stopped, his heart pounding in his chest. "What the?" Hank whispered. Vampire bats, hundreds of them, hanging upside down from the ceiling, their eyes glowing red in the beam of his flashlight. Hank froze, his blood turning to ice. "Oh God," a frozen, terrified Hank said. He knew the legends. The bats of Blackwood Caverns carried a deadly strain of bubonic plague. The bats stirred, their leathery wings rustling. They sensed his presence. Hank turned and ran, his screams echoing through the passage. The bats swarmed after him, a black cloud of death. He ran until he could run no more, his lungs burning, his legs screaming in protest. He stumbled into a large cavern, his flashlight beam dancing wildly across the walls. He saw a pool of what seems to be water in the center of the cavern, beckoning him with a false promise of safety. "Water! I'm saved!" he shouted in pure joy. He raced towards it, desperate to escape the bats. But as he reached the edge of the pool, he realized his mistake. It wasn't water. It was quicksand. His foot sank into the soft, yielding earth. "No!" he cried out, scrambling to regain his balance. But it was no use. He was sinking. The quicksand sucked him down, pulling him deeper and deeper. He thrashed and screamed, his movements only accelerating his descent. The bats circled above, their squeaks filling the air. "Help me! Somebody help me!" he desperately screamed. He was up to his neck now, his arm raised, his fingers clawing at the air. He screamed one last time, Oliver, a desperate plea for help that would never be answered. Then his head was sucked under. His arm followed, disappearing beneath the surface. The quicksand closed over him, leaving no trace that he had ever been there. The bats continued to circle above the pit, their squeaks fading into the silence of the cavern. They returned to their roost, leaving Blackwood pitch dark and quiet. Oliver, lost in the labyrinthine tunnels, heard nothing. He was completely alone, surrounded by darkness and the echoes of death. He didn't know what awaited him, but he knew he had to keep moving. He had to find the creature. He owed it to the people of Crestwood, to the men who had died in these caves, and to himself. The hunt continued, into the black heart of Blackwood Caverns.